Welcome to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast, episode 7 here.
Say.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes we're only 10 seconds in. I've already messed up once. So they call this the dead period of sports. So we're going to be jumping around quite a bit today. We got a Big 12 Media Day, second half of the Major League Baseball season starting tomorrow. So Chuck and I are going to jump into that. He loves him some baseball. So,
Yes, sir.
got some NFL training camps later this month and a lot more. So quick reminder, you can download, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube once it's posted there. Thank you for the support. It's just Chuck and I today. So more than enough as always.
Let's hope so. I guess we'll know at the end of this, right? Like, man, we could have used another voice in there.
Yeah, I know. If we need someone else, we'll just run downstairs and yell at Don to come up here.
There you go.
So before we get to sports, Chuck, did you see the real cheeseburger from Burger King?
So I think I did. Is that the one with just the multi-layers of cheese that's stacked about 5 inches tall? Yeah, I did see that. And
Is there anything more disgusting than that?
it's hard to imagine that there anything that is. But, you know, it's fascinating. Everybody was talking about, oh, look at the calories and all that. And all I kept thinking was, man, can you imagine something like that? Built obviously in a chemistry lab. I mean, what are you putting into your body when you eat that?
And it's American cheese too. It's just all gross. Can you imagine eating
No,
a burger? I love me a grilled cheese. I will kill a grilled cheese. That's a little bit much.
It's a little bit much in so many ways.
Like, why don't you just get some nacho cheese and just dip a bun in there at that point?
You could.
But that begs the question: what do you like on your burger, Chuck?
Pretty much everything but cheese, if I'm being honest.
So that burger's horrible for you.
Yes, I like pretty much everything. You know, it's always, you know, as I've gotten older, I like putting peppers on there and all kinds of stuff that, you know, destroyed all my taste buds over the years. So I need something to amp things up.
What's your favorite burger place here in town?
Oh man, you know, I don't eat as many hamburgers as I used to, but you know, it's hard to find a bad one. You know, when you get right down to it, Chester's is solid.
Chester's good.
But you know, there's plenty around town. Certainly, you don't have far to look if you want to find a hamburger joint in this town.
Yeah, I'll take some mushrooms, some bacon, and Swiss cheese on my burger.
Okay.
Give me that all day. Twice on Sunday.
Sounds good, minus the mushrooms, but it's all good.
I'm a big fan of mushrooms. Not a lot of people are. It's the fungus for them, I guess. I don't know.
I was gonna say that's a loaded answer you just gave too. I try to stay away from the mushrooms as much as I can, Matthew.
All right, so let's get to sports. The Cowboys training camp, they open up at the end of the month. Are you excited?
Indeed, I am. In fact, I've been working tirelessly on a couple of pieces where we went behind the scenes with the Cowboys a little bit during OTAs and mini camps. And, you know, just seeing what the equipment guys have to go through to essentially move the Cowboys' space all the way across the country. And then, you know, some of the things that they're tasked to do during the course of the season is just absolutely fascinating to me. It's not just moving weights and T-shirts and socks and jocks. There's just so much that goes on with the pre-planning and all the execution. So I'm looking forward to the start of training camp, but to me, the off-season is become just as fascinating because of the things that you can learn when things slow down just a little bit. So I think it's kind of cool. You know, we're getting ready to go full bore with the Cowboys as soon as camp starts here, you know, the last week of July. And to think that we can have a couple of really cool, I think, juicy pieces to kind of set camp up that have nothing to do with the players. You know, I'm really excited for, you know, more than just, you know, what we see on the field.
You're always good at finding those stories that are a little bit less X's and O's and more hanging with the Joes kind of thing.
Yeah, you know, I think as I get older, Matt, and I think you'll probably find this too, is that you've gone to so many games, so many big games, so many cool events. You know, I actually enjoy watching practices more than I do games now because it's fun to see or learn how things are going to get to Sunday. Mm-hmm. You know, you watch the game, and a lot of people watch with just the entertainment value of scoring touchdowns or the scoreboard at the end of the day. But for me personally, I like to see how the baby is made before we even get to that point.
Right, and the equipment guys, you'll find with so many teams across the league that their equipment guys have been there for 30 years, or it's a generational thing. I know with the Broncos, who I follow pretty closely, their equipment guys and their trainers have been there for decades.
You're right, and that's a pretty astute observation because I didn't know that. And in fact, in talking to Bucky Buchanan, whose father introduced him to the Cowboys world of equipment when he was a kid. Actually, Buck Sr. actually just got an award from the NFL recognizing all of his contributions during his 20 years with the Cowboys. And now his son has been with the Cowboys going into his third decade. So he was telling me stories that, yeah, there were actually 4 father-son combos that have kind of, gone from one generation to the next. And it's actually pretty commonplace.
It's so interesting that they just they watch their dad do it their entire lives. And then they're like, you know what? I want to be an equipment guy too. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. And it's cool too. You go do a story like that, and the stories that these guys have, and being in a big league clubhouse for all these decades. I mean, it's pretty funny stuff, and a lot of the stuff you have to keep to yourself. But it's still really cool to see the world that they live in through their eyes, and then tell that story too.
So on the field, what are your expectations as we get closer to training camp? We get closer to the regular season. What are your expectations for the Cowboys this season?
I think they're going to be pretty good. I mean, obviously they had a pretty good team last year. The question is, can they have a postseason run that is more significant than round 2? It's going to be fascinating to see how McCarthy does calling his own plays and see if that enhances this offense, especially in crisis situation, which pretty much every playoff game is, and then how do they develop or own those skills during the course of the regular season so that when they get to the playoffs, everything's clicking and they could just fire instead of, all these chains of command and everything else that they had to work through these last few years. So I'm curious to see how it all plays out, but my gut is they're going to be just fine, and that this is a team I think that is built to win. Win how much? Obviously, that's a whole nother question.
I'm going to be curious to see how they do against the Eagles, one, and I'm going to be curious as to how fast they start, because I think you could make an argument that 1 through 53, they're almost as good as the Eagles, but it's going to come down to, okay, can they get off to that fast start as the Eagles are bringing in an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator? You have all these guys that weren't on the Eagles roster last year, and that continuity with them. Are they going to get, slow out of the gates and give the Cowboys maybe a 2-game lead in the division that then it comes down to those games later in the season between the two of them?
I think, and knowing how McCarthy operates too, the biggest challenge that they're going to have during the course of the year is division games. And those are the games that mean the most. So, not only how are they going to do against Philadelphia, but the Giants clearly are better. Washington always seems to be a pain in their rear, and they're a very physical team, and it's a kind of game that, you're probably going to be licking your wounds after. I mean, this is a very stout division, and you've got to handle your business there first so that you're not burying yourself later in the season when you're playing some of these other games too.
I just don't know what the odds are for that they can win this division. I really don't. I think that they're a playoff team for sure, especially now that they're 7. I think they're definitely at least a wild card team, but I don't know how good they're going to have to. They're probably going to have to go 13-4 to win this division.
Maybe, but I think because of the continuity in the division, it's going to be really hard to know all these things going in. But again, the depth of the division, so that's 8 games right there, or 6 games right there, where you're going to get your nose bloodied a lot. And then, of course, because they made the playoffs last year, they've got a playoff schedule the following year. So it's going to be a long march, and you had the extra game. Again, that's been a bit of a challenge. So I think the biggest thing for them is, just making sure you're staying ahead of the curve. You've got to find a way, at least through the first part of the season, to win more than you lose so that, you're not playing uphill the rest of the season.
I think it was Dak recently said that there's a little bit more of a sense of urgency now that he's turning 30 and he's in his 7th year, going into his 7th year, I think. So I think that the pressure on him, he's putting a lot on himself this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how fast he comes out, how McCarthy's offense comes out, and see if they're clicking on all cylinders from week 1.
Agree. And, again, for Dak, were the interceptions last year an anomaly because of, the kind of offense that they were running last year as opposed to what they want to do this year? Maybe some of it, but it'll be interesting also to see if they can adapt quickly to whatever it is that McCarthy's going to have them be doing this year, which is mostly they're going to be running the ball a heck of a lot more than they did last year. I could tell you that.
I don't care what anyone tells you. Dak's favorite receiver last year was Dalton Schultz, and he's not there anymore. So I think that's going to be a huge question mark when it comes to the tight end room. I don't know how I feel about their tight end room right now.
Well, that's certainly an area of concern, I would think, right? Like, who's going to start?
Yeah.
And you can start right there.
I mean, it's going to be what, Jake Ferguson, Hendershot, or Schoonmaker that they just drafted. So, I mean, I just don't know how I feel about their tight end room. I mean, we didn't know who Dalton Schultz was a couple of years ago either.
Right, but I think they're going to play a little differently this year too. So, the most important guy to me on this team in terms of their offense is Tony Pollard. I mean, he was the guy that everybody game planned for. And then when he went down in that playoff game, all of a sudden it was like somebody cut their ankles off because that game plan was really built around him. And so how do you go forward knowing that he's your most explosive offensive weapon, but yet prepare him so that he's not getting 30 touches a game? You have to kind of preserve him so that he's available and fresh going into the postseason like he was last year. I mean, you can't discount the fact that a fluke injury can happen at any time, but he clearly, unless somebody else rears their head, is their most explosive player. And I think depending on the season that he has is probably how the Cowboys are going to go on offense.
Yeah, that game turned on its head when Tony Pollard went down with the injury. I mean, they were rolling too, and they were getting explosive plays. They were taking advantage of their opportunities, and then he goes down, and it completely changed everything. I don't know. I find it interesting with Corky, as you call him, with Mac. He's come out and said he's going to run the ball more, and he wants to kind of take the ball out of Dak's hands sometimes. I don't know what that says about Dak, because you never hear Andy Reid say that about Patrick Mahomes. You never hear Nick Sirianni say that about Jalen Hurts. He says, I want the ball in his hands because he's our best player. So it's almost kind of an indictment on Dak when they're trying to transform this offense into something that runs a little bit more because they don't want the ball in his hands.
I look at it sort of like that, but I think there was a time when the Packers really changed who they were when McCarthy was there, even when Aaron Rodgers was at his very best, and probably maybe to the detriment of the Packers. I know when things were going bad, it's like, well, why are they so hell-bent on running the ball as much as they are? I mean, because there's a 5D level game of chess going on. The more you run the ball, the more you can control the clock, the more you have longer drives, the less bad things that can happen with the football, when you're chucking and ducking all over the field. Is Dak a Patrick Mahomes type talent? I don't think he is, but there's only one Patrick Mahomes, in the NFL. So, I think from a globally or a 40,000 foot view point of view, these are one of those things where, you keep your defense rested. There's a bunch of factors into why they want to sort of change the dynamic. It's not like there was a huge difference in the splits between passing and running it last year, but I think overall, this is going to be a team mindset. Every day, the offensive linemen know you've got to win your battle up front. If you're going to have a tight end, sometimes come in as a fullback or go with two tight end sets. It's going to be a mentality and a mindset. And that's why I think he's moving all these offensive linemen around too, because it's going to be a grittier, punch you in the mouth type of offense in a lot of ways. And so I don't know if it's necessarily an indictment on Dak. It's just from the 40,000 foot view. How do we keep our defense fresh in the fourth quarter? Those type of things.
But then you have to look at the personnel. If you're going to change the entire identity of your offense, you didn't really change the personnel of your offense. So are they the punch you in the mouth kind of offense? We're going to wait and see, but they were more finesse last year, and changing the entire identity is kind of a hard thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, you're right. To your point, can they be a really physical, get in your face, ground and pound type of offense? We'll see if this is what they're practicing or if this is what they're trying to achieve. You would think they're going to be a little better at it. But again, you're right. The proof's going to be in the pudding.
Right.
And obviously, if they get bogged down early on, they may have to change and pivot.
Do you think that they're the favorites in the NFC East right now?
Boy, that's a hard one to answer, right? Because, I mean, for everything that we just talked about, the Eagles look legit. Washington looks legit. The Giants look legit. And the good news for the Cowboys is those teams have to play each other too 6 times. So they're going to get beat up in those games as well. I think it always comes down to health. Who's going to be the team that somehow manages this season in 4-game increments better than maybe some of the other teams do. And again, you just don't know when the injury bug is going to come up and really bite you. I mean, obviously, if Dak gets hurt early on in the season, it's
Didn't matter last year.
Well, it didn't, and they were fortunate, right? So, but can Cooper Rush, or then take it a step further, if Cooper Rush has got to play 10 ball games, now exponentially he's now got more of a chance to get hurt. So, it always comes down to the health of the team. You can start with that. The teams that are healthy at the end are usually the ones that are making the postseason.
The only thing I know in the NFC East that is absolutely going to happen is that Boston Scott is probably going to score a touchdown against the Giants. That's all I know. Because that's what he does. Let's get to some Big 12 Media Day. That was yesterday. Recording this on a Thursday around 1 o'clock. So it's going to be weird, man. This whole season is going to be so weird. With the dynamic with Texas and OU leaving, having the last OU Oklahoma State Bedlam game, it is going to just be weird the entire way.
It is, and I don't know, because obviously Texas has been picked to win, but I don't think people are discounting the, good old American hate that they're going to face
every
week. Yeah. It is going to be death to, if we're not victorious, then none of us come back alive. Every single week is what they're going to be facing. Somebody's going to want to send them a message and then, be able to put on the message boards. Yeah, good luck in the SEC. All that stuff is coming. So you're right. It is weird. I mean, I looked down yesterday. It's like, who's speaking today? It's like, oh, wow. We got BYU. We got UCF. I mean, just things you're just not accustomed to seeing. So, yeah, I'm old, so this happens a lot at my age, but it is weird.
Well, when they play Alabama, unless they win that game, they're going to be dragged afterwards. They're going to be like, you're going there? You're going to go to the SEC and play with them? If they get destroyed in that game, they might as well just not come back to Austin, because that's going to be rough. And then, on the 23rd, they play Baylor. You're going to tell me Baylor doesn't want to kick the crap out of them for leaving? Then they play, who else? They got Kansas, Oklahoma, Houston, Kansas State, TCU on November 11th. They're going to want to kick the crap out of them. Texas Tech, the last game of the season, they're going to want to kick the crap out of them. They're going to be getting everyone's best shot all year.
I'm with you.
It was funny, though, because Sark was asked about if he thinks that this year is going to be awkward yesterday. And he was like, no, it's not going to be awkward for us. I mean, if people want to make it awkward, then maybe it will be. But for us, we're just going to go and try and win the Big 12, which is our goal every year, and they haven't done yet. But I think it's going to be awkward.
I agree. And again, it may not be awkward for Texas, but again, there's going to be a little extra juice. So we'll see how it plays out.
Literally everyone trying to show them that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. But I'm kind of sad that the Oklahoma State rivalry is going to be pretty much gone, because Gundy was asked about that yesterday, and he was like, we're not going to play them out of conference. One, we have our schedules pretty much scheduled out 15 years in advance, and we're not going to put them on. It's their fault for leaving. Like, I'm sorry that the rivalry's over, but this is the last one we're going to have.
The other side of that is, though, thank God for Texas and Texas A&M
That's true.
So, I mean, they might say individually that they don't need each other, but I would say in terms of helping college football and to bring attention to college football, there's not going to be anything like the first Texas A&M game. So I'm here for it.
Texas and Texas A&M is going to be electric next year.
Every single time. It doesn't matter the sport, but in football, when guys get to contact each other legally,
I think at that point it'll be like Jimbo needs one win a year, and it's against Texas. It's kind of like it's all those rivalry week games. What was the one last year? It was the Apple Cup. They were like, I don't care if we win one game all year. This is the one game I want to win. So it's going to be back to that, Texas and Texas A&M.
Right.
So let's get to a little bit of baseball. We'll be talking plenty of college football in the coming weeks as they get underway as well. So let's get to some baseball. We're starting off the second half of the season tomorrow. Did you enjoy the All-Star game?
I did. Especially with all the defense early, there was a lot of it. In terms of how I look at these exhibition games, I mean, I think to me, clearly baseball's the best of the best.
I mean, it's an actual game.
Right. Hockey's I guess from what I'm told, is a pretty good All-Star game. And when I was a kid, your age, I was really fascinated by the NBA All-Star game because to me that was a whole nother level too. Guys were having fun, and maybe they didn't play defense to the fourth quarter, but there just seemed like there was way more continuity and way more flow than there was, going on with what these games are now in the NBA All-Star game. So I don't know. I did enjoy it, but I also don't like the fact that, the Monday before the All-Star game and then the Wednesday after the All-Star game are the two most horrific sports days on the planet.
Oh,
so
my God, yeah.
I wish there was a way we could curb that or fix that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not a fan of All-Star games in general, or Pro Bowls, or whatever it is. I don't watch them. I just don't. Like, the Home Run Derby has no interest to me. Maybe a little slam dunk contest for the NBA, but not really anymore. The 3-point contest, I'll tune in for like the first round just to see why or who's going off. But I just don't like any of it. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just a stick in the mud.
It's been played out. I think that's the whole thing. I mean, like I said, when I was younger, watching Vince Carter in a dunk contest and you're there and you see how good that was pretty epic. But if it doesn't match that every single year, and if the slope continues to go down, in some years it was an absolute joke. It's like, well, you're going to tune out and not waste the time.
And it's weird for me because I'm just such a sports junkie all the time. Like, I'm trying to mainline whatever sport I can get. I'll sit on the couch and watch football for 15 hours when they have the London games all the way until Sunday Night Football. But you put me in front of a TV for an All-Star game or a Pro Bowl, and I'm gonna fall asleep. Like, I don't find it interesting at all.
Well, I think it's because you're like a lot of people. I mean, there's got to be some juice in it, right?
Yeah.
If all there's going to be is an MVP trophy awarded at the end of the night, then it's the spectacle a little bit. But I was curious more so this year because when you got a guy from your own backyard starting in the All-Star game, it makes it a little more fascinating.
Speaking of which, how'd Josh Young look?
Well, he wasn't afraid of the moment. That was obvious. I mean, he got beat on a play that could have had an infield single, and he just missed. He got a cookie the first time he was up to bat, just missed it. But his approach was really good, and he didn't make any errors. And again, with all that brass, and you're a snot-nosed rookie, getting to be on that kind of stage, he held his own.
It's good for us right now because the Astros and the Rangers are both really good this year. And I don't know how long it's been since both of them have been really good in the same year. Usually it's either one or the other. I mean, until 2016, it was the Rangers, and then after that, it was the Astros. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this division plays out.
I agree, because over a decade, you're right. It seems like one team has passed the baton to the other, and maybe now back. We'll end up seeing that, but it's good for the state.
I mean, the Rangers are up by 3 games right now. Who do you think is going to end up pulling out the division?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, if you would have told me, given the long list of Astros who've been hurt, especially to their pitching staff, and I shouldn't say just the pitching staff. I mean
Yordan Alvarez too.
Yeah, and Big Mike hasn't played at all this year. If you would have told me that all these guys would be on the sideline, and everything that's gone on, here they are only 2 games out, I would have told you were smoking crack. But that's what happens when you have built a culture like the Astros have. It doesn't really matter to a certain degree. Like, it takes a long time to shake the stench of winning. I mean, they've got like that scent around them like a dirty old skunk, and it just will not go away no matter how much you pair off or which guy leaves or whatever. I mean, we're talking, only 4 of those guys had ever won or were on the Astros for both of the World Series championships, and then Verlander left. So you've got 3 of those guys left. One of them's hurt, and Altuve's been nicked up. So
Altuve's getting old.
Yeah.
I feel like the Rangers needed a 5 or a 6 game lead at the All-Star break with how good they were up by. I think they were 20 games over 500 at one point, 21 games, and then I think they're only at 13 now. I think they're 52 and 39 or something of that nature. But I think they needed a bigger lead with how good and how hurt the Astros have been and how good they are. I can't see the Astros not winning the division.
Well, I think it'll be curious to see what happens before the trade break, because I think the Rangers know that this might be their chance, and they've been obviously relentless in terms of going out and spending dollars. So I don't think that's going to be an issue either. So, if you can get maybe another one or two guys that you could add to the bullpen, maybe get another starting pitcher, maybe find another bat or a guy that, can kind of work different positions in terms of defense. I'll be curious to see what they do from that standpoint, but I don't know that the Astros are going to be willing to do that at this point, just given the injuries, because they're, it's almost like they've plugged and they've done a great job over these last few years of just bringing up guys from the minor leagues that are doing the job for the most part.
Yeah, I don't know what's more impressive to me for the Rangers has been their lineup, which has killed, or their starting pitching, which is just incredible. Like Dunning, John Gray, and Nathan Uvalde have been just insane. I think they all have sub-3 ERAs right now. They have been pitching their butts off.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are bullpen savers, that's for sure. And it's nice if you have even one of those guys that gets out of kilter for a start. Every time Nathan Eovaldi steps on the mound, I think he's going to win. I mean, he just says that kind of stuff.
It's so interesting, too, because when he left, I wasn't sad when he left the Red Sox. As a Red Sox fan, I was just like, he helped us win a World Series. I loved Nasty Nate forever, but he was kind of losing it, and you couldn't really rely on him all the time. And
off and on hurt.
Yeah. All the time. He's just like DeGrom. He's had elbow troubles as well. And so, I wasn't sad to see him leave, and now that he's doing really well with the Rangers, I'm a little bit pissed. But
well, aptly so. But that's life as a pitcher, right? Some days or some years you're really good, and maybe some other years you're not. But
well, crap! Look what happened with Alex Manoah this year, with the Blue Jays. He was like third in the Cy Young voting last year, and now he's getting shelled in rookie ball.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't know if either of them should make a huge trade either, because I could see the Rangers making a splash, but I don't know how much it would help.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would. I think at this point you're trying to build depth as much as you can, because that's the difference between the good teams and bad teams, especially in baseball, is that the bad teams are usually built, to have 9 position players or 8 position players, and then maybe a couple pitchers and maybe a closer. But, once guys start going down, what does the depth look like behind them? And so I think the Rangers know that. I think the Astros know it too. But the Astros, because of how unfortunate they've been with this litany of injuries, that, maybe they're just going to ride it and see how it goes, and then maybe take their chances and see what they got in the postseason. I mean, obviously, if they make it to the postseason with all the injuries that they've had, this group that they have assembled right now has earned the right to do this themselves.
Agreed. And the Rangers have been the complete opposite. They've been extremely healthy, extremely fortunate. Outside of Jacob deGrom, they've been extremely fortunate with their DL right now. So,
can you imagine if he was healthy?
Yeah, I mean,
that staff.
Well, that's been the story for the last 8 years or whatever it's been.
No doubt.
I love DeGrom, but good Lord, man, I feel so bad for him that he's just injury prone, and especially with that elbow. But are you a Hard Knocks fan, Chuck?
I haven't watched in the last 3 or 4 years, but if you're going to put the Jets in there, that might juice things up.
They're going to be a mess on there.
Yeah, I just don't know how much of it's going to be authentic, and or staged. Especially with Rodgers. So I don't know, but I will say that knowing that he's on there and everything that he's about off the field might spice things up a little bit.
Can we just have one scene of Aaron Rodgers tripping on ayahuasca or something, just going nuts in the training room or something like that? That's all I want. I've never watched Hard Knocks ever. Not even one episode, which also is weird for me because, like I said, I'm a football junkie. So I don't know what I'm missing, but I do know that the Jets are probably going to be a mess.
I hate to sound like the old man. Everything was better when I was a kid, right? When the Cowboys were on Hard Knocks, it was epic. It's like, yeah, let's see what these guys come up with. I mean, we're at camp every day. We're here, we're there, we're everywhere. And then the first episode, they have a camera mounted in the weight room, and there was a fight between two Cowboy players in the weight room. It's like, golly, how did they get that? Well, of course, I didn't know they had cameras mounted throughout the Alamo Dome doing all that. And then I remember when the Baltimore Ravens were on there too, back in the day when Priest Holmes was on there. That was pretty funny too, because they followed a couple of the big name guys like Saragusa out to the clubs, and it was funny watching how these guys interact when they're, just regular dudes. So it seemed like it was a really good idea at the time, and it was fairly entertaining when it first came out. But now, year after year, to put somebody on the clock, especially when the Cowboys did a pseudo Hard Knocks during the season, I think it was Jason Garrett's last year in the league, that was, again, I'd find value with that only because you're probably going to learn something that helps you do your job too.
Well, I will watch this year. I think I'll watch just to see what it is. But the best thing about it is it gives us more stuff to talk about. So
right.
I'm never mad at somebody for giving us content. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yes.
But that's all we got for you today. Quick reminder, you can get the podcast wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. The YouTube version will have some video elements, usually of all the sound bites. Didn't have any sound bites today, though, so just more soothing sounds of Chuck McGetinick. Please download, subscribe, rate, review, give us 5-star rating and some feedback. Feedback is a gift, and we greatly appreciate it. We will be back next week. It will be a guest, actually, and we're going to give Chuck. He's going on vacation, so not going to hear from Chuck McGetinick for a week and a half or so.
Yeah, 3 ballparks in 3 days, it looks like, via the road. Rangers,
love it.
Royals, and Cardinals.
Royals, I love Kauffman, so
yeah,
Kauffman's
nice
a great stadium.
Yeah.
But we will see Chuck in a couple of weeks. Don is going to get the week off the podcast next week too, but I will have a guest host, so stay tuned for that. We will see you next week right here on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast.